You'll never guess what secrets this suspense hides. Another expert present offers a different view. Traditional view sees time as linear like a river, but what if a big chance arises anywhere on it? Perhaps it could create a new current flowing towards the future, just with a different route, and definitely not the same path as before. Since that's the case, they placed the written note into the machine and sent it back to Doug the night before the crazy explosion, while Doug and Larry were in a heated argument over the case. Right, we should hurry up and leave because I feel like I'm about to float away. But due to system power limitations, by the time the note reached, he had already departed from the office, and it was not him who actually saw the note, but rather Larry, who remained there without leaving. The situation had already become irreversible. Doug helplessly watched Larry replace him, with only 7 hours left. So Doug instructed his colleagues to switch the observation angle to the dock where the killer was about to appear, and after a search, they finally found the killer. They even captured a clear image of the killer, but just as everyone cheered, Larry quickly arrived at the dock, confirmed there was only one killer, and charged right up only to find that the next moment, the killer ambushed him through the car door, dragging the heavily armed Larry into the trunk. Even worse, the killer's car was about to leave the system surveillance range. If they didn't act fast, they'd soon lose all. The only way to track the killer was to use a magnifier with a signal booster, even though he had no idea how this high-tech gadget worked. Doug jumped right into a Hummer equipped with the magnifier without hesitation. He then sped off in the direction the killer was heading. However, when he used the magnifier following his colleagues' online instructions, the images went out of control, leaving him confused momentarily. Luckily, Doug reacted quickly. He pushed aside one of the lenses, floored the gas pedal, and sped off again, performing a slick drift turn. Then he started a high-speed chase in the wrong lane, finally locking onto the killer's image again. But just a little distracted, a real truck crashed into him. Fortunately, Doug's Hummer was tough enough to withstand several hits and keep going. For safety's sake, Doug had to hold the magnifier with one hand while speeding along with the other, guided by his colleagues. Soon enough, Doug found himself at the killer's lair, which appeared to have just undergone an explosion. There was a burnt-out ambulance in the middle. Using the magnifier, Doug had everyone witness the entire heartbreaking moment of Larry being burnt by the killer. Larry's death made Doug realize that they hadn't changed the entire course of events, but just one segment. Larry's sudden arrival and smashing of the killer's window forced Doug to find a new car for the bomb. Fortunately, Claire was just about to sell a car, which naturally made her the next target of the killer. Although Doug couldn't save Larry, the FBI tracked the killer's true identity through the farm address and successfully captured him. It turned out that the killer planned this explosion simply because his previous military application had been denied. In a bid to prove his capabilities, he targeted the US military who were about to take part in a Victory Day event, just as Doug had suspected. It was precisely because Larry appeared and ruined his previously stolen car that he later disguised himself as a buyer for the vehicle. Confronted by Doug, the killer just said, "The devil has reason, God seeks eternity." With the killer apprehended, the leader announced the disbandment of the Special Task Force. But Doug couldn't accept this outcome, as Claire was still alive in another timeline. The ship carrying US soldiers remained docked, and he wanted to save everyone. The only way was to send himself back 4.5 days using the equipment. However, this kind of time travel was too dangerous, with no previous successes as precedent. But at this moment, Doug was already willing to risk it all. As the device powered back up, the whole city plunged into darkness. Meanwhile, the hospitals of 4.5 days earlier went dark until power returned. Subtitles, and they swiftly discovered Doug, who was convulsing all over. After emergency defibrillation from the doctors, Doug's heart, which had stopped, finally stabilized. The next morning, when Doug woke up again and realized he was fine, Doug quietly changed into a nurse's uniform and drove the hospital's ambulance swiftly to the killer's lair. Meanwhile, the killer was about to finish off Claire, but just as he was pouring gasoline over her, Claire, who was just breaking free, accidentally scratched his cheek. Seeing the blood on his fingers, the killer instantly tried to use scissors to cut off her fingers. Subtitles. Unexpectedly, right at that very moment, Doug drove the ambulance right in. The killer reacted quickly, pulling his gun and firing, but Doug was caught off guard and got shot in the shoulder. Unaware of Doug's background, the killer quickly left the scene and detonated the gas line inside. Watching the flames shoot up, he assumed they were both doomed and drove to the dock, but little did he know. Doug heroically saved Claire from the fire. Time was of the essence. After verifying their identities, Doug sped off rapidly with Claire toward the dock. However, Doug's shoulder injury was severe. Without TIMELYO, Cyrillic letter 46B had not reached the end. Pressured by Claire, they first went to his place to tend to the wound. Since Doug had been there before, he immediately took Claire to the boat.